Hi, hello guys, and welcome to Maya 102 UV mapping. And you might already be wondering, what are those weird letters? UV mapping, what does it mean? What is a UV map? Well, it can be explained roughly as the step which is between modeling and texturing. So it's what you want to do to your model before you start to apply any material or any texture or any color to it, because it is essential for the texture to be displayed correctly on your model. So if we take a look at this amphora, for example, as you can see, it's got a texture on it, a material, some sort of dirty ceramic. Well, this dirty ceramic texture is saved, spoiler alert, as an image, as a 2D normal image, because the CG industry has decided that normal 2D images like JPEGs, PNGs are very safe, very easy, not very storage heavy, and overall very practical. So we just now have one simple problem. We've got a 3D object, but we have a 2D image as a texture, and we need to invent some way to have that 2D image to be placed on that 3D object. So how would we do that? Well, if we take a look at planet Earth, for example, as you can see on the left, I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with that map of our continents. Planet Earth is, of course, a sphere, a roundish primitive, so to speak, and you can imagine this. You can imagine this map, this map of our continents, to be well, it has been peeled off planet Earth, like the skin of an orange, and has now been tried to be placed, well, on a map, on a texture in 2D. Another more brutal example would be on the right, the skin of that animal. Of course, that animal has been sliced open, and the skin has been peeled off again, and well, basically it's now flat. It's basically a flat two-dimensional representation of that animal, exactly as the map on the left is a 2D representation of the 3D model of planet Earth. So if we take a look at our amphora again, we can see that the texture which is on the right side has the model, some sort of, well, the model is laid out on top of it. The amphora has also been sliced open and peeled, and it has been tried to put the basically the structure of the amphora as conveniently as possible onto that image, so that we now have the texture on the amphora. Here we can also see the UV layout of the model of a car. A car, of course, is a more complex model. It's not as easy as planet Earth or just peeling the skin of an animal. It's got different parts like headlights and, I don't know, doors, windows, and tires. And of course, everything has to be laid out correctly so that the texture can be applied later. So what has been done, and what is very common when it comes to UV maps, is to have that object or the different parts of the object separated, because what we want is to have the 3D object, to have this layout 3D object as clean and non-distorted as possible, so that all the faces are not stretched out, everything is laid out correctly, but in the same time you want as little seams as possible, so that the model is it's as little separated as possible with as as little distortion as possible. So there are basically two limitations on both sides, and they meet in the middle. So as you can see on that model, it's done pretty good, pretty well. The roof has been separated, the front has been separated, the tires have been separated, and everything makes sense. And we are not going to do this with our 3D character. So here are a few guidelines. Okay, the first isn't really a guideline, it's what UV mapping is. It's the first step in the texturing workflow. It's for the texture to be applied to your object correctly. Before you do UV mapping or UV unwrapping, make sure, please, that your model is finished and you're not going to change anything later on that object, because the 3D pipeline is pretty restricted. So if you have a character and you model it, and then you unwrap it, and then you texture it, and then you decide to change the ears, for example, and it's going to get quite hard, because of course you can easily go back and change the ears, no problem with that, but you would have to redo all of UV unwrapping and all of texturing to well, have the correct ears that you wanted. So please be sure that your model is finished. Also, you have to make sure that the Maya history, as I explained earlier, is deleted on your model. So I don't want you want to make sure that your model is clean and that there are no unnecessary nodes saved in it, stored in it, because you would have to drag these. You would drag these nodes along onto texturing, which can result in some problems. And also, as I at least try to explain, the quality of the textures highly depend on the UV mapping that you have done. And so you want all the parts not to be stretched out, to be as correctly displayed as possible, and as little UV seams as possible. Well, how would we do UV unmapping, you ask? Well, if we take a look at this character, you of course have to decide where to put the seams, or more brutally spoken, where to cut him open. And well, I personally would do it on some places where you would not see it that much. So for example, in on this human face, as you can see, the face has been peeled off from the back where the hair is, and on the neck, so the face remains untouched, which means that the face doesn't have any risk or any potential to be broken UV mapping wise, because there aren't any seams. And we want to do that too, but we're going to do that live later on, because I'm pretty sure you have seen this sometimes. A UV seam is not something which is very pretty, but sometimes it cannot be really avoided. Sometimes the texture would not line up. In this example, it's the case, or the shading does not work because the maps you have used, we come to that to a later stage, don't align, and it all is really messed up and it doesn't work. And you want to avoid that, and so you have to place the seams where they are not very well, obvious. Okay, let's jump into Maya and try to unwrap our model ourselves. Hi, hello. So here we are into Maya, inside of Maya. Well, here we are inside of Maya, and we are presented with this beautiful character of a human person. And well, of course, the first thing you want to make sure is that the history is deleted. So we go to Edit, Delete by Type History, and then we want to make sure that the model is finished. But well, I'm pretty sure it is. So there are no triangles whatsoever. Everything is clean, so we can start UV unmapping it. or UV unwrapping it. So the first thing you want to make sure is that you're in the modeling tab, which is over here. So make sure you have selected modeling, and then we go to UV, which is up here. We press on that, click on UV editor, and two windows will open up, I hope, and they do. The first thing is the UV toolkit, which are just tools, general tools that you can use to manipulate the UV map that you will create of that model. And the second window is the actual UV editor, which is basically a coordinate system with two axes, U and V. That's, by the way, why it's called that way, because X, Y, and Z already are occupied. Well, for this tutorial, I'm going to concentrate on the head. I'm not going to cover anything else because, well, it's just a tutorial and I just want to get across the general idea of UV mapping. I don't have to do the whole character. So for that purpose, I'm going to click on face, select only the head. By double clicking on it, it selects only the object. As the head is separated, it all works. And then I click on isolate select, which is up here. So the rest of the model isn't deleted, it's just hidden, and I cannot touch it. Now what we can see are blue edges and white edges. I just pressed F, by the way, to focus the frame, to frame the object. The white edges pretty much are already natural seams that Maya has kindly provided for us. So it's around the neck and around the eyes because it basically is the end of the model, so to speak. Well, if we take a look on that model, if you click on it, normally you would see the UV map inside here. You don't, as there isn't any UV map there. So first thing we want to do is to create a UV map, and we can do that by clicking on UV and, for example, click on automatic. Sounds good, doesn't it? We click on it and it has, well, for once it has unwrapped the whole character, which is okay because the automatic unwrapping will just uses the whole object. But as we can see, it's not as good anyways. So the whole nose is missing, the ear is sort of messed up, and the eye is broken. Everything is basically disassembled, and that, of course, and I hope you can see that as well, is not a very good UV map. It just doesn't work. So we just press Ctrl Z and make sure we only have the head selected. Here we go. And instead what we can do, which is very, very cool for primitives, is cylindrical, planar, or spherical. But we can also do camera-based. And camera-based basically creates a UV map depending on the perspective that you are viewing the model in. So if you click on camera-based, okay, it has created a UV map for the whole model again. That's my mistake, I'm sorry. So what went wrong? I just wanted to have the head. Camera-based. Here we go. Don't know why Maya did that. Okay, here we go, and we have a UV map. But of course you can see that this still isn't as good because, well, for once we can check how good the UV map is by clicking on that little checkerboard here, which only loads up a texture with a checkerboard on it onto that model. So if we now view that model, we can see that everything looks fine and dandy from that side. But if we turn it, oh dear, there is texture stretching, and the back, of course, is the same as the front, which is also not what we want, because, of course, the head, the forehead has not the same texture as the back of the head. So this checkerboard is a very good idea to get a sense of how good the UV map is in such order that you, of course, that each rectangular shape or each rectangle has the same size, so you can basically see that well, that these obvious are not looking so good. And later, when you have separate objects, of course, you can see that some objects have well, are bigger scaled or larger scaled, some are smaller scaled, and you can adjust that by just looking at the little rectangles. It's overall very helpful, but if you're annoyed by it, you can just turn it off by clicking on that again. All right, then. So what we are going to do is create some seams for that head. So in order to do that, we go to Edge Selection mode. So press on that object and go to Edge, and then well, sadly there isn't a general solution to what degree or where to place seams. Of course, the first rule is that they should not be as prominently visible. So I wouldn't do them in the middle of the face, rather on the back of the head. And also, you have to think about it where you would like to peel the skin of that person, to put it brutally. So for my understanding, if I take a look at the character, I think it would almost be sufficient if we take that forehead and select the middly bit. Now that we have the back of his head selected, let me select the only 2 edges left. I think this already could be sufficient. What we want to do is, inside of the UV editor, we can well, it's basically is just a 2D viewport in comparison to the 3D viewport. So all the tools that you are used to inside of Maya are the same. So we also can choose our what we want to select: edges, vertex, face. We also have UV, which is something different. Explain that later. And we also have a shift select menu. So again, if you press shift and hold right click, we can select cut, which creates a seam for us. And if we press cut, we can already see that well, the back of his head has turned white, and there has been a seam created. So next thing, of course, we want to do is to unwrap him. The problem is that Maya has sometimes a lot of bugs and sometimes a lot of problems and errors with UV unwrapping, and I don't know why. So I'm going to show you the safe and secure way, which might come across as a bit, well, overly complicated, but bear with me. Well, the first thing we want to do, if we have our character, we of course want to make sure that, well, the middle of the face UV map is also the middle of his face. So I will select, well, this edge in the edge flow in the middle, all across his face, and I'm going to press this little button and this little button, linear align, and then I can press shift and draw a box around the character, and everything that, well, it basically inverts the selection. So this way this seam stays in the middle where it has been aligned. I'm now going to press shift right click, and here we have that an unfold option, as we can see here. Going to go to that, and instead of pressing unfold, I'm going to press unfold U, and then I'm going to press unfold V. I do that separately because Maya sometimes has problems doing that. I can just show you what would happen if I just press unfold. It would not look as good. Okay, I pressed one too much. One other time then. Unfold U, and unfold V. And now we have our beautiful unfolded face. Another additional thing that I would like to do is I want to separate the ears, as I want to show you how that would work. For that, I'm just going to grab the left ear of this character. I'm going to edge selection mode again and select all the edges around his ear, basically. Here we go. Oops, where did I do something wrong? No, let's do it like this. Okay, here we go. And of course, again, inside of the UV editor, we can press cut. And we now can, by selecting from the right-click menu UV shell, we can select only the well, what? Oh, cut didn't work somehow. Did I even press it? I don't know. So cut. Here we go. Okay. Seems like I didn't press it. So I just cutted the edges of that ear. And what we now want to do is to go into the UV shell editor, or just go to UV shell select, and then we can select either the face or the ear, as the ear is not separated, and we can just drag it to this place here and press unfold again, and then it won't change so much, but it will look a bit better. And now, if we take a look at our grid view, we can see that the character is now properly unwrapped, at least the face of him, as all rectangles are basically the same size and scattered evenly, and nothing is stretched, and yeah, so this worked. And if you have multiple UV shells like the ear and the face, of course this is only 2, but if you have multiple, you can of course select that, rotate it as you want, I don't know, manipulate it. For the ear, of course, also. And if you have a lot of stuff, you can also select all of it and go to modify and layout, and then Maya will just yeah, do a well, arrange the UV shells in such a way that the space is the space of that rectangular texture space is perfectly well, it's effective. Everything is arranged in such a way that there's no space wasted, essentially. So yeah, the only thing left is to export that UV map in order that you can well, to have you actually drawn something, to create a texture. And what we are going to do that is we go to image, UV snapshot, and here we can of course say where it belongs. So just going to save it on the desktop and call it, I don't know, face.png. And we can select the type. I take PNG, and the size. The size is best in quadratic numbers. So 2048 or well, 1024 would be appropriate. And I'm just going to leave it like that. The edge color is going to be purple or pinkish, and gonna lock the aspect ratio, and all looks perfect. I click apply. I must select a valid object. Okay, well, didn't do that. I have to select the face, of course. Press apply. It worked. It's saved. And I can now just go to my desktop, and here we go. Here is our map, which we can now load up into, for example, Photoshop, and yeah, use it there to create our texture, which we can then load up onto the model. Thanks for listening. Bye.